All right, here we go. I am back. And thank you very much to everybody who wished my mom a happy birthday yesterday. Very fun day, and I appreciate all of those wishes, and more importantly, she did. Very kind, lots of fun I had with my parents, and I'm headed back later today. Hopefully I'll be home to host a hangout tonight, but I do have to head into New York City and go to Barry Ritholtz's new book has released. He's having a book party, so I will let you know as soon as I know what time I'll be back to host tonight's hangout, so look for that email. Also, of course, today's show welcomes the great David Rothkopf. We have a great conversation I think you're going to love. That is coming up at 30 minutes in. But first, as I do most days, I've got your headlines and your clips. All the issues that matter the most, that impact the most people. I try to gather them. I try to aggregate them and choose them, and then I list them here for you, as well as a great clip show coming up. So let's get to it right now. Busy day in news yesterday in our crazy world and our authoritarian-run government that is doing its very best to both destroy everything that we hold dear, as well as our economy. So let's get to it. Yesterday, Senate Democrats said they're not going to be helping Republicans pass a bill to fund the government through September 30th, according to the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who apparently, by the way, Trump said is no longer Jewish. Yesterday he said he's no longer Jewish, now he's Palestinian, which is just a bizarre notion and idea, but I guess if you're president, you can do it. The parties, so Schumer instead urged Republicans to consider a shorter extension to allow time to negotiate individual spending bills. The decision significantly raised the chances of a shutdown at the end of the week when the government's funding is set to run out. There is little time to find another path. House Republicans left town after passing their funding bill, so it now looks likely, I'm going to say, but I don't want to say that because these things change often at the last moment. Yesterday, just hours after Trump's global tariffs on steel and aluminum imports took effect, the European Union and Canada responded with retaliatory measures. Yay! This is fun. Canada said it would impose additional fees on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, effectively raising the prices for imported American metal, computers, and sporting goods, among other things. I hope you got all your metal, computer, and sporting goods before this happened, before the election. Should have thought of that if you didn't. The EU said its retaliatory tariffs on about $28 billion worth of U.S. goods would take effect on April 1st. Oh, so maybe you can go get those goods now. How about that? Go get your metal things and sporting equipment that you need. Maybe you need a catcher's mask or a lacrosse stick shaft. European officials emphasized that they were ready to strike a deal with the U.S., so maybe it won't happen. It's hard to follow. There's whole lists of products that tariffs might hit and probably worth going to take a look at before you have to pay them. All right, let's check in with what's happening between Ukraine and the U.S. Major news yesterday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that he hoped a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine would take place within days. Ukrainian leaders agreed to such a truce. They're glad that their relationship with the U.S. appears to be on the mend. That complicates things, however, for Vladimir Putin, Trump's boy, or I think Trump is, his boy. He has signaled that he does not want to stop fighting until he extracts major concessions from the West, but he also wants to maintain a good relationship with Trump, which he owns, so I'm not sure why that would matter. One thing that could benefit the Putin, according to the New York Times, is Russian troops have made advances in a territory Ukraine hoped to use as a bargaining chip in peace talks. So that's a very complicated situation, and I do not think this administration is up to negotiating it, and I don't think they care. All right, well, a U.S. judge has agreed to temporarily block implementation of Trump's executive order to strip security clearances and take other actions against prominent law firm named Perkins Coie over its policies promoting workforce diversity and its work for is 2016 election rival Hillary Clinton. This is a crazy case and a ridiculous situation, and I've got a clip coming up for you to explain it a little bit more from, I think it was CNN's Jeffrey Toobin. The U.S. District Judge named Beryl Howell at a hearing in Washington yesterday said she would grant Perkins Coie's request for a temporary restraining order against Trump's order. So there. It's going to make it up to higher courts, and we'll see what happens from there. And we'll come back to it in a moment with Jeffrey Toobin. All right. Well, speaking of other legal news, a U.S. district judge has ruled that Trump administration must quickly pay nearly $2 billion in foreign assistance owed to its humanitarian partners around the world. They said the administration probably violated the Constitution by blocking money allocated by Congress. Do you think? U.S. district judge gave the Trump administration until Friday to provide a status report on payment thousands of invoices owed to relief groups for work performed before February 13th. And by the way, in a related story, as a result of this and other issues, the United States has been added to a global human rights watch list over declining civil liberties and not paying those bills. Other countries in the watch list include the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is not democratic, Italy, Pakistan, and Serbia. So it's not great company to be in. All right, well, finally, in legal news, a federal judge in Maryland suggested yesterday that he might direct that thousands of fired federal workers get their jobs back, at least temporarily, after hearing arguments that their layoffs were unlawful. Imagine being one of those people that was laid off, and then a judge says, well, you might be able to go back to work temporarily and then just get laid off again. What a nightmare for those folks. And there was some encouraging news yesterday for the economy on inflation, which affected, of course, the markets, but apparently price growth cooled. Price growth. It cooled. Oh, well, more than expected in February. A welcome sign for markets that have been spooked by the specter of persistent inflation, though evolving U.S. trade policies because of our authoritarian tyrant little man are complicating the outlook. The consumer price index rose 2.8% in February from the year before, less than forecast and slower than the 3% annual rate in January, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Can they still be trusted? I mean, who's running that place? And Wall Street had the first good day in a while. The NASDAQ composite rose yesterday after a soft inflation. That report I mentioned eased concerns about the economy, and as investors snapped up the beaten up technology shares. Did you get yours? Did you get your technology shares yesterday? Any day traders out there? The first shots of Trump's trade war have been fired. Canada, I mentioned this, announced new retaliatory trade duties on some $21 billion worth of U.S. goods. And no, I mentioned the EU's response. Sorry. So now Canada has responded. And news from Greenland. They had an election there. And the party that has sharply criticized Trump's threat to take over Greenland secured a surprise election victory Tuesday in the Danish territory. So Trump is not only unifying Canada and Europe and pretty much everywhere else, but Greenland as well. So they want independence from Denmark, and they have no interest apparently in joining the U.S. So that'll be a story that we'll continue, obviously, to watch and be just astonished by. This guy really does want to add some land to America, name it after him before he's gone. And I thought this was an interesting story worth mentioning. More than 30 army chiefs among our closest allies met in Paris without the United States, which is unprecedented. They're seeking to take on more responsibility of the Ukraine war, given President Trump's unpredictability and rapprochement with Moscow. The closed-door gathering of 34 army chiefs, including NATO alliance and EU members, as well as Japan and Australia, was rare and maybe unprecedented to convene without the U.S. So, I mean, it's happening. They're going it alone without us, without the United States military. The Education Department yesterday fired more than 1,300 workers, which is a huge story. The cuts are going to make everything harder in terms of, well, everything, but certainly how to measure how students are doing. The EPA, for their part, plans to close the offices that are responsible for addressing disproportionately high levels of pollution facing poor communities, because who cares about pollution in poor communities? I'm outraged, and I'm just trying not to act like it. They also canceled $20 billion in grants for climate and clean energy programs, which I'm also outraged by and trying not to lose my mind over. The federal agency dedicated to mental illness and addiction, well, they could lose about half of their staff to cuts this week. So, yeah, no big deal there with any of those three headlines. And this one, Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire announced she's not going to run in 2026, which complicates Democrats' efforts to regain a majority in the Senate if there are still elections in the United States of America. Those are the headlines that I've gathered for you from yesterday. I'm sure I missed more than a few, but I blame you for seeing it and not emailing me. You got a headline you want to mention? A news story I might have missed or has been undercovered? Email it to me now, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Now, it's time to get to your clips. Time for the clip show. I need a clip show jingle. Who's got it? Pico? Huh? Who's doing it? Let's go. Clip show. Very short. Time for the clip show. Here we go. Well, I've been trying to get Eric Segall on, and hopefully we will talk today or tomorrow or maybe even over the weekend about this issue with Columbia University and the pro-Palestinian activist who was disappeared and everything that it says around speech and free speech. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, the Trump administration, is trying to say, well, listen, he's not a citizen, so if he says bad things, you can just kick him out. With some arcane rule that they're referencing. Well, I thought it was interesting that our old friend Will Cain had free speech absolutist Glenn Greenwald on his show. Now, Glenn has turned heel, of course, but in this case, it seems like Will Cain and Glenn Greenwald agree that this you can't do. Actually enjoyed watching this and think that the real good points being made here.
Protests where he seemingly sides not just with Palestinians but with Hamas. He has openly called for the end of Western civilization. Still, when do we go too far? What is protected by the First Amendment? As a reminder, this is how it reads. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. Join me now to debate this issue, which I think deserves hearing from both sides, is human rights attorney Brooke Goldstein and journalist and constitutional lawyer Glenn Greenwald. Thank you both. Glenn, I'd love to start with you. I find you, and for that matter, our relationship interesting because in the past I might have agreed with you vociferously. Recently, more agreement. I'm not sure where I stand here today, Glenn, but I know you look at this and you think many on the right have all of a sudden abandoned their defense of free speech.
Oh, there's no question that they have. I mean, this is what happens when you're actually a principled free speech advocate instead of one who only objects to censorship when it's your political allies who are being targeted, which is that a lot of people say they believe in free speech, except when it comes to the ideas they most hate, which they want silence. I just want to make one crucial point, which is you had said people on the far left, like Rashida Tlaib, believe that legal residents in the United States have the right of free speech. That is an indisputable proposition that the Supreme Court has for 200 years affirmed. And just imagine if that weren't the case. It would mean that if, say, like Jordan Peterson, who's not an American citizen but is always in the United States, were to go and denounce the Biden White House, the Biden White House could arrest him and deport him, and nobody could object on constitutional grounds because he's a foreigner. Of course, people legally in the United States have the right of free speech, and we don't want to create any kind of a framework, especially on college campuses, as the American right has been saying, where because of the argument that minority groups are endangered by certain views, black people or trans people or whatever, we have to censor those views in order to create a safe environment. And that's exactly what so many American conservatives out of great loyalty to Israel are now doing.
I appreciate you saying that and correcting me on the longstanding policy on the United States First Amendment. I also would say, in correction of myself, it's not just the far left and Rashida Tlaib. It is, as you said, principal individuals, including those on the right, that would bring up the First Amendment.
All right. Well, there you go. That's how it sounded on the Will Cain show yesterday on Fox. I thought that was interesting. Well, it doesn't matter to Senator Tommy Tuberville, who doesn't understand anything about anything, much less how to pronounce anti-Semitism, because the guy, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure that Tommy Tuberville doesn't have a lot of Jewish friends and probably doesn't like him. And probably he and his daddy his whole life said the word Jew in a way that was unsavory, to say the least. Anyway, here's Tommy Tuberville completely disagreeing with it. He thinks that if he doesn't like the speech, then it's not free for it. Here he is. Let him explain it.
But when it comes to protesters, we got to make sure we treat all of them the same. Send them to jail. Free speech is great, but hate, free speech is not what we need in these universities, and they don't need to be doing things that they're preaching from Hamas about anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism? Okay. Well done, Tommy Tuberville. Really smart stuff from the senator from Alabama, as always. All right. And now here from CNN is Anderson Cooper with Jeffrey Toobin. And they're talking about that case I mentioned where the president is on his revenge tour, and he's trying to prosecute a law firm because they defended Hillary Clinton, as well as they have workforce diversity policies in place. He's going after any private organization, in this case a law firm, that has DEI initiatives. It's something that probably should get a lot more attention, but everything should get more attention. Here it is.
What is your reaction to the judge's ruling?
Anderson, I've heard a lot of court rulings, but I have never heard a judge declare something unconstitutional in so many different ways. She said this was a violation of the First Amendment free speech rights. She said it was a violation of the right to counsel. She said it was a it was a violation of due process. She said it was a bill of attainder, which means it was specifically targeted against one entity, this law firm. I mean, it was just a complete destruction of this executive order for now. But Judge Beryl Howell, very respected judge. She's an Obama appointee. In this case, is going to move through the appellate process. It may have a different fate.
Is it possible this will end up in the Supreme Court?
I think it really may, because there was such a clear conflict between the Trump Justice Department lawyer who was basically saying, we don't have to give a reason why we exclude this. We are excluding.
Right. He was saying that the president has the right to go after any company or any individual that he feels is a threat.
And you don't have, and the president doesn't have to give a reason. It can be a good reason. It can be a bad reason. And Judge Howell made a very interesting argument. She said, you mean you could go after Williams and Connolly, which was the law firm representing Perkins Coie. You could go after them for representing Perkins Coie. And the Justice Department lawyer sort of danced around, but basically said, yes, this is entirely in the discretion of the president. And this conflict about the scope of presidential power is what all of these conflicts are really about. The Elon Musk cases, where, can the president's designee, Elon Musk, go in and fire all these people? All of these are about the scope of presidential power, and that's what the Supreme Court is going to have to resolve.
Yeah, I mean, their judge, as I mentioned, that the lawyer's argument, the government's lawyer's argument from the Department of Justice, she said it sent a chill down her spine. Essentially, these law firms are saying that this is going to destroy their business because part of the idea of this clearly is to intimidate companies from hiring these firms. Not related even to, anything the company might have with the Trump administration.
And it came out in court that Perkins Coie has already lost clients. I mean, this executive order is less than a week old, but they have lost clients. And you can understand the client's position. It's like, how are you going to represent me if you can't even go in to visit the Securities and Exchange
Commission? And if it's a major company is going to hire this firm, and then the president is going to attack that company because they're hiring this firm.
Right. And that's why Judge Howell, who was really very outspoken and thoughtful about this, said, this is a threat to all of the legal profession in America. Notably, though, and this is consistent with what's going on in the whole country, very few law firms and very few sort of prominent lawyers have spoken out against this publicly, and Williams and Connolly deserves a lot of credit because they weren't afraid to take. Well,
also, I got pushback from Republicans, who saw the stuff we've been doing that's on this side. Well, look, this is payback, this is fair play. Look, they went after Trump. This is a law firm that is representing people. It's as if a Democratic administration would take away the law licenses or go after the firm that represented President Trump in all the legal cases he's been facing.
Correct. And that's not what you can argue.
The Trump lawyers had security clearances. They weren't taken, their security clearances weren't taken away.
They weren't taken away. And this idea that you can go after lawyers is very new, and at least according to this judge, very scary.
All right, there you go. That was Jeffrey Toobin explaining it. I thought that was pretty good, and so I wanted to share that with you. Now, I had this clip of RFK saying all kinds of bullshit about the measles vaccine, and I was just about to play it here for you, and then I realized I don't think I should play it. I don't think I should platform this kind of public health misinformation and just stupidity. Plus, his voice is intolerable. Plus, he was sitting with Sean Hannity at a Five Guys restaurant, and other people in the restaurant were acting like Sean Hannity and RFK Jr. weren't there taping a conversation, which I thought was hilarious. So I'm going to skip that, but I do want you to know that RFK said some crazy shit about the measles vaccine yesterday, and it was rejected by, well, the entire public health community, as is most of what RFK says, and even Twitter fact-checked him, and that is run by a fascist Nazi. So, yeah, there you have it, and I'm skipping it. Moving on. Well, say what you will about Republican extremist conservative Congressman Thomas Massie. He is consistent. He doesn't like government spending. It doesn't matter who does it. He thinks it causes inflation, and so he's not going to vote for the Republican budget. He's going to be a problem for Trump on any that continuing resolution that is going to continue to add to the budget deficit. So Trump's going to probably have to call him and yell at him, and then Thomas Massie's going to have to tuck his tail between his legs and vote for it, is my guess. But here is Thomas Massie briefly talking about his ideological consistency to reporters in Washington yesterday.
Threats against you, a primary challenger, his campaign establishment appears to be poised to try and contest you.
It feels just like 2020. March 27th, 2020, when I was the only one to oppose the CARES Act. The president threatened me. I got 81% of the vote. And then what happened? The spending bill caused all this massive inflation that we see now.
All right, well, there you go. That's Thomas Massie yesterday. And speaking of a similar issue here on CNN was Senator Mark Wayne. Hey, Mark Wayne, come on over. I'd like to play with you. And he was on, what's wrong with me? He was on CNN with Caitlin Collins. And he also realizes the truth about tariffs. And but, you know, luckily we have the smartest president in the world in charge. Here's that.
Well, but the businesses seem confused. I mean, Wall Street, we're watching. I mean, you're seeing the numbers.
Sure.
What's a business leader left to think, or an investor?
It's tough right now, and I understand that. I'm a business owner. We all make decisions based on two things: the way we're raised and our life experience. Before politics, all I ever did was business. You need certainty, which is why we need, tax policy that's permanent, not that's able to fade in and out. I'm not trying to get off on that subject, but I'm just saying that we need certainty in the business world. Tariffs is a tax, and it will be passed on consumers. But it also allows us to have open markets. So if you want to have open markets and access to other markets, so let's go past Canada and let's go past Mexico and start talking about the rest of the countries we allow to come in here, that the president says we want to have reciprocal taxes on you. If you're going to or tariffs on you, if you're going to charge us 36%, we're going to charge you 36%. If you want to charge us zero, we'll charge you zero. Every one of these countries want access to the strongest and greatest economy in the world. That's the United States. We don't necessarily have to have their market, but if they're going to have access to us, we want access to their market.
What you just said is important, that a tariff is a tax and it is passed on to consumers.
Of course it is. Everybody knows that.
That is something the White House does not acknowledge.
No, that is something that the president, who is a business person, understands that completely. No one understands the economy better than this president. There hasn't been a president that understands this economy better than this president.
And I think
it's always so rough when they go on TV talking directly to President Trump and just lick his boots. It's tough to hear. It's also absurd, obviously, but you knew that already. Well, I like this clip, and thanks to our friend Kim Nyborg in Iowa, who we're going to see in Vegas, PODJAM. We love Kim. She's brilliant and hilarious. She sent this clip to me today. Otherwise, I don't know that I'd seen it. This is John Larson. He's a congressman, Democrat from Connecticut. He completely loses his cool yesterday during a meeting on the House Ways and Means Committee. He raged at his Republican colleagues for refusing to bring Elon Musk before the committee to discuss his work with Doge. And I am here for it, and so are you. Literally, you're about to hear it, so you're here for it.
We're an equal branch of government, and you start off with a blather, and yet look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security. He's been on television the last couple of days talking exactly about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and what he intends to do. Privatize it. The American people, some of them may have been born at night, but not last night.
Oh, good stuff. I like that a lot. More of that from more people, I say. And here finally on CNBC yesterday, it was Jim Cramer, Mad Money. You know, he used to work for that guy. He used to warm up the audiences on his live Mad Money tour. We traveled around at a whole bunch of colleges, and in one way, it's how I got the job at SiriusXM hosting Stand Up. I was already there hosting a comedy channel, but the guy who was challenged to launch the channel that I first was on recognized me from the Mad Money tour. So I guess we have Jim Cramer to thank for me and my career in a very tiny way. I like to think it would have happened anyway. Anyway, here it is, Jim Cramer on CNBC yesterday talking to whoever listens to CNBC. Jim Cramer wrong about most things, but I think he's right about this.
So let's talk about stock prices in the White House. Now, this weekend, the president said he's not focused on the stock market. Maybe if you're in power, you're not up for re-election, the stock market could be ignored. That's just one problem. This is what the president's forgetting. The stock market serves a dual role. Yes, it makes rich people richer, no doubt, at least when it's going up. But when it goes down, it can also be a signal that things aren't well in the economy, that business could be getting tougher, and that layoffs could be on the table. Now, big picture, I mostly agree with the president's attitude toward trade. Even if I disagree with the details and certainly don't like the angry way he's handling it, let's do it. All right, listen to me, guys. Right now, the market is trying to tell President Trump that he shouldn't be so rancorous and angry. Just try to get the job done sotto voce, under the, just fly lower, please. And if he keeps ignoring that message, we could end up a hell of a lot lower than where we are with stocks and with the economy.
All right, there you go. Cramer, Mad Money. And let's end on some laughs. Let's go to my favorite comedian, my favorite monologist, at least, my favorite monologue on late night shows. I mean, I like Colbert, but I always tend to like Kimmel's monologue better. Maybe I'll give you a little of both. Here is Jimmy Kimmel last night on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Washington, they got an early start on St. Patrick's Day. President Trump this morning welcomed the Prime Minister of Ireland. Although welcomed might not be the right word. Trump spent most of the meeting telling reporters how badly Ireland treats us while he was sitting right there. That's his thing now. Anytime a world leader shows up, right off the bat, they have to apologize for whatever slight President Drama Queen has created in his head. Putin will get a back rub if he ever comes, but the Irish Prime Minister gets a stubby little finger in his face. Most of Trump's meetings now take place in front of the press because why be off TV when you can be on it? And since the White House kicked out the Associated Press, they've made spots for friendlier outlets, which is a decision that has created a buffet of buffoonery, much of it from a gentleman who happens to be the boyfriend of Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's the one who asked Zelensky, why aren't you wearing a suit? Today, he hit the Irish Prime Minister with this important question.
Welcome to the United States. You look great.
Thank you.
Nice suit.
Now you feel good.
Ireland is known for very happy, fun-loving people, great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question. Do you know you have Rosie O'Donnell?
No.
Do you know who she is? Do you know who she is?
Yeah. I'm joking.
You better off not knowing.
This feud with Rosie's been going on longer than me and Matt Damon now. It's kind of, listen. What a great question. This is the kind of energy you bring when your girlfriend keeps beating you at arm wrestling at home. You know, if they're going to allow stupid questions to be asked at the White House, I would like them to invite me to ask some stupid questions. Mr. President, I'm with ABC. When you're on the toilet, do you ever look down and cry?
All right, there you go, Jimmy Kimmel last night. And I think that's going to be it for the clips as well. Headlines and clips. I can't do it without you and your support. So thank you very much. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. To all of you who pay a subscription, I am so grateful. This is what I do. This is my job. And you are supporting me and independent media, which is the way to go these days. So I am super grateful for your support. And if you're not, sign up now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Not only are you supporting independent media, I think you're supporting yourself in many ways because you get to be a member of our amazing community, which is always active on the Discord platform 24/7. And I host 2 hangouts a week, which you get access to, live events, and so much more, connecting folks together. And it's the best thing I've ever been involved with. So I cannot thank you enough for being a part of it. Sign up now if you aren't already. Okay, here we go. It's time for my friend David Rothkopf and yours. And you should go subscribe to his Substack as well as his podcast. Deep State Radio is the series of podcasts, the network. He's got a whole network of them now, as well as his Substack, which is called Need to Know. You can find that in the show notes. All the links to David. Support him on Blue Sky. Follow him there. Let him know that you heard him here on the show, and you always appreciate when he joins. He's a pretty regular guest of mine. He's one of my mom's favorites. So I started by making sure that he wished her a very enthusiastic happy birthday. This is how we started. So let's do it right now with David Rothkopf. David Rothkopf is here, and I should have mentioned before I hit record, I'm in my childhood bedroom visiting my parents. It's my mom's 79th birthday, and she is a huge fan and a paid subscriber to your Substack. So I was hoping that you could just say happy birthday, Mary. She's a
happy birthday, Mary.
Yeah, thank you. That'll mean a lot to her. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you. It's been a while. Your hat really matches your eyes. Beautiful.
Thank you. I'm in this natural light, and I appreciate you noticing that. It's very sweet of you to open the interview.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
What color would you call that?
That's like an army green.
That's what you say your eyes are when you're going on a date? He's like,
well, I don't go on a lot of dates, but
army green.
No, if I was on a date, I'd say the emerald. They're like emerald.
There are.
If I'm on a date with a MAGA or a Trump guy, then I would say army green because they're very much into that. I think.
No, you'd say dollar green.
Oh, that's right. Because let's start there with the economy. It seems to be the big story. The big story.
Well, it's one of the big stories. Yes. Is it a big story that we're entering a recession we didn't have to be in? Yes. Is it a big story that people are losing their jobs? Yes. Is it a big story the stock market is plummeting? Yes. Is it a big story that prices are skyrocketing? Yes. Is it a big story that big government shutdowns are causing pain across the country because 95% of government workers don't work in Washington, D.C.? Yes. But on the other hand, money is a big story here because this is the most transactional government ever. And there's always a scam behind these things.
Right.
Having a shitty economy may make it look smarter for them to do the insane stuff they're doing with crypto. Because there are all these crypto guys around Trump, and they want to phase out the Fed. They don't particularly like that. And they want it all to go. Of course, whether they want to do that or not, that's not the point. The point is that by being in power and saying that, they can pump the price of crypto. And as they pump it, then they get ready to do what they do when they pump the price of things. Then they'll sell it. But they'll all make a lot of money. And do they care if it causes hardship? No. And then there's other forms of money. Figure out Trump yesterday was standing on the lawn of the White House doing a Tesla infomercial.
That's right.
Reading.
What's wrong with that?
Tesla stuff. And then saying, and this does hint at why this is so corrupt. He then said, and anyone who attacks Tesla facility, I believe, though, they're guilty of domestic terrorism.
That's right. That went a little undercovered because a lot of people were focused on the fact that he was selling shit with the White House as a backdrop.
But he is like totally making up the law as he goes along. And there's this guy, and he's at Columbia, and he's got a green card.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Let's kick him out of the country because he's pro-Hamas. What does that mean? We probably should know what that means. Is he really supporting Hamas, or was he simply anti-Israeli, or was he promoting the Palestinian cause? And which of those things makes you, in the eyes of this administration, a threat?
Right.
Because if we start tossing people out of the country because they're a threat, and essentially the way the law is written, if you have a green card or you're on a visa, the Secretary of State can determine your threat simply for being contrary to the foreign policy interests of the United States. It's never used, but they're just using this stuff. So we're throwing political opponents in the slammer and declaring attacks on the private companies of government officials to be domestic terrorism, and by attacks, protests. and penalizing Columbia University $400 million in federal funds. Because
what does that do?
Well, that does a lot at Columbia if you were doing research or you worked there. Harvard put in a hiring freeze. Johns Hopkins just got hit with $800 million of funding stop.
What do they do?
They just research diseases and cures. And we've stopped all funding for that. It was really sweet that Trump had this poor kid who has cancer during that speech. What was pernicious about it is that he's cut all funding for cancer research. And before too long, RFK Jr. is going to stand up and say, the best thing to cure cancer is a good morning jog, because he makes up shit.
Yeah.
So measles, let's use cod liver oil. Meanwhile, there's 15 states with a measles outbreak. We haven't seen this in decades because it's a nincompoop. Now, maybe he's selling supplement. There's always a grift someplace.
Right.
Maybe
There's always a scam. I think we don't think that way because we think in traditional political arguments, like what are the special interests reason for passing that law or deregulating this industry? It's not as much of I think when you say scam, it's like a legit shorting the market or crypto scam or say one thing, look over here. And that's different than special interests or other types
it's corruption, right? It's in normal government. It's like Trump 3 days before he's inaugurated and launching a meme coin.
Right.
Exactly. Which makes him $3 billion. And that's most of his assets right now is this meme coin. Where's that coming from? It's coming from a lot of foreign governments that are saying, well, here's the way we can help put money in Trump's pocket. And Tesla, SpaceX, the companies of Twitter or X, Elon Musk is trying to use this to boost the amount of money he gets from the federal government, which is tens of billions of dollars. So far, by the way, hasn't really worked so well with Tesla prices, and Twitter is circling the drain, and SpaceX rockets are exploding, but it hasn't stopped him.
Let me go back to Colombia and that situation because I wanted to you were posting a lot about that on Blue Sky. And what are your thoughts on the Anti-Defamation League and its fall from perhaps its most respected point, and just anything else around the targeting of that specific guy and what else it means for whether it be the issue domestically or free speech or anything else? I just wanted to get a little more from you on.
A few months ago, you recall some university presidents were called to Congress to testify.
That's right.
About this. And the president of Harvard was asked, what does it mean when somebody says from the river to the sea or whatever? And she said, it's a nuanced issue. And the Republicans didn't like that at all. And of course, she was right. If you say from the river to the sea, in a seminar discussing Middle East politics, it's different from if you're standing with a megaphone saying, let's go kill the Jews, right? One's bad. One is the kind of thing you should be allowed to say on a university campus. And there's something in the middle. The First Amendment guarantees people the right to protest. And a lot of people on the sort of Jewish establishment side, like the ADL, lined themselves up with the Republican right and said, yeah, we've got to be tough as hell on Hamas. Even though a lot of the protesters had nothing to do with Hamas, they were just protesting either Israeli genocide in Gaza or they were protesting the treatment of Palestinians more broadly. But at the time when people were lining up on this, I said, hey, be careful, Jewish organizations, because this is not because they feel this way. This is because they want to be able to censor what is taught in universities, what is taught in public schools.
Right.
And we've seen, why is $400 million being withheld from Colombia? Because of concerns about anti-Semitism. Why is money being withheld from other programs around the government and around the country? Because of DEI. What does DEI even mean? There's a list of prohibited words at the Defense Department.
I like that list. I agree with it.
What?
I agree with prohibiting most of those words. I've taken some.
You mean the Enola Gay? So they can't post pictures of the Enola Gay because the plane had the word gay on it?
Have you seen that plane? Did it look like a tough guy plane to you?
No, it looks like a big, long silver penis.
that
That's what I
drops
say.
atomic bombs.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Good. It's the ultimate expression of manhood.
It's the ultimate expression of cancel culture to cancel a bunch of words, or censorship to have the government say you can't have these words. I interrupted you.
This is not cancel culture. This is authoritarianism. We're way past that.
Yeah.
This is the federal government saying we are going to use all the tools we've got. Funding tools, legal tools, prosecution, pressure, bullying, to get people to stop talking about things that we don't like. Well, and so will they stop places that promote vaccines? Yes, that's what they're doing. Are they doing that in public schools now? Yes. And we are getting into a society where people don't do that. And I'll tell you, just as an aside, I've been in a bunch of meetings with very senior level sort of Democrats and other kinds of critics, Republicans who are critics of the administration, smart people who've contributed a lot to the United States. And a number of them have said to me, I'm just not going on TV anymore. I'm not talking to journalists because I don't need the attacks from the government, or I don't want to have my security clearances stripped away from me, or I don't want to be pressured.
I don't want to create any smoke at all.
And I understand they have families, they have lives, they want to support their families. But the flip side of this is it's working. The critics aren't on the air. There's less flack for the utter insanity that we're seeing around us. And I think the most important thing to drive home is we're in a place no one ever expected us to be in every single area of public policy. We've not only turned our back on 80 years of foreign policy, we've flipped the script. We're on the side of Russia. We're on the side of the autocrats. We're on the side of the enemy, and we're against our allies. And we're talking about taking over our closest neighbor, seizing land in Greenland from a NATO ally, Denmark, in terms of the rule of law in the United States. The U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin, sent a letter to Georgetown Law School saying, if you are teaching DEI, we're going to investigate it. We will not allow people from your school to be hired in the government. They sent a letter to a law firm that had supported Hillary Clinton and said, your people are not allowed in federal buildings anymore. I didn't
read about that one. I heard they'd sent a letter to a law firm, and I saw Conway going crazy about that, but I didn't know what it was.
It all had to do with Hillary Clinton. And that law firm, by the way, in the past 24 hours is fighting back. But a lot of people aren't. The president of Columbia wrote a letter that was essentially bending the knee to them. You don't see solidarity. You would have imagined in this environment 200 university presidents or the Ivy League university presidents would sign a letter. We stand for academic freedom. We will not be bullied. That's not what's happening. The Georgetown dean did write a good letter, but a lot of other people aren't. The Democrats certainly aren't on the Hill.
All right, I have 9 follow-ups on what you just said, so I have to interrupt you and get to one or two of them.
Sure. I'm sorry to monologize here.
No, I thought you were analogizing, which is a word I just made up. But,
yeah.
Okay, one, you mentioned critics aren't going on the air anymore because they don't want to attract the smoke, and that you've been talking to people.
We're being penalized.
And so I would say that some of them are, and where are they? And so I think independent media is doing a good job in terms of people like you and me, and just people still feeling safe doing the kind of work and being honest. And then I would say there are electeds like a Jasmine Crockett, certainly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are either making Instagram videos or still going on MSNBC, CNN, et cetera. Maybe split that hair about
I'm not saying there are no critics. I'm just saying there are fewer critics. I'm saying it's working to some extent.
Overall, it's working to some extent. Second one, split a Jewish hair for me. You're Jewish. I was talking to some Jewish people at my hangout the other night, some subscribers, paid subscribers, and I was arguing with them because I think that's a good look.
Jews?
No, me arguing with Jewish people about, in this case, anti-Semitism. So
you were pro-anti-Semitism?
It depends what we're talking about.
No, it's a good point.
So my point was to talk about the only kind of anti-Semitism that Trump and Republicans care about is anything that's anti-Israel. It doesn't seem like the rest of anti-Semitism.
Well, of course, they're fucking Nazis. Elon Musk is giving Hitler salutes, and they're trying to they're getting gun privileges back from Mel Gibson. How many anti-Semitic statements did Mel Gibson make over time?
He does not seem to like.
There are all these like extreme right wingers among them, and they support Orban, anti-Semite. They support Putin, anti-Semite. The giveaway here is the Israeli government. The far-right ethno-nationalist Israeli government also supports those people, even though they're anti-Semites, because the global movement we have to worry about is authoritarian ethno-nationalism as manifest in Trump, in Viktor Orban, in Vladimir Putin, in Bibi Netanyahu, in Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil when he was president, in Milei in Argentina, in Modi in India. The world, it was communists and it was capitalists, and now the world is divided between ethno-nationalist, anti-globalization authoritarians and the countries that still maintain belief in democracy and in markets and in human values like supporting the rule of law and tolerance and so forth.
And the ideology that most people don't understand, including myself, that seems to be gaining a tremendous amount of ground and have control of a lot of power is this network state, this tech state, the oligarchs who are the tech bros, your Elon Musks and your J.D. Vance, who are influenced by all these weird ideas from people like Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel and others. Like that ideology doesn't seem to be given enough credit, I feel.
Elon Musk talks a lot about wanting to go to Mars. But the reality is that Elon Musk and a lot of the tech bros and a lot of billionaires have already left the planet Earth. And this is it sounds funny, but this is where we are, right? Because the reason we're here is that when you shut down Social Security, you shut down Medicare, you shut down Medicaid, you shut down schools, you end vaccine research, you destroy the U.S. economy, it has no effect on them. Oh, yeah, Elon's net worth is up 100 billion or down 100 billion. He still has hundreds of billions of dollars. He will get whatever he wants. If he wants to be a ketamine addict, he gets away with it.
He just wants state power, and we know why. He wants power in every state of the world and to be one state, a tech state.
But he wants to do whatever he wants.
Right. Yeah,
and the point is the billionaire class, the multimillionaire class in the world lives a life that is completely disconnected from the life of everybody else. They don't have nerve endings where we live. So the pain that we feel, they don't feel. And this whole idea of these techno cities and all this stuff is to say, if we produce enough economic activity, then we don't want to play by your rules anymore. We want to opt out of the social contract, opt out of the rules that the rest of the country plays by. And this is it. I don't want to sound too academic, but it really gets down to Locke and Hobbes and Rousseau and the whole idea that we enter into a social contract to get out of a state of nature and provide certain goods for everybody else who lives in society. And what we give up is a little bit of control to the government in order to protect ourselves.
That does not fit in a tweet.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't fit into...
I'm just anti-government. That's all I know.
But these people, they're saying is that period is behind us. We don't have to
know about that period.
Pardon me?
Oh, I don't know what people are talking about. You said these people are saying that period is behind us, and maybe Musk and Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin know about that period. But I thought you were saying these people referring to.
They don't know. They don't know anything about that period. Yeah. They just know that they have unlimited privilege,
right,
and that they are beyond the reach of the law, that they have impunity. And the combination of privilege and impunity of an oligarch class is incredibly dangerous. But for the past 40 years in the United States, we have increasingly ceded power to that class in the hopes that some magic formula that was spouted 40, 50, 60 years ago, that it will trickle down to us, that if they do well, we'll do well, is going to work out. And let's not tax them, and let's not have regulations, and let's let them pick the Supreme Court, and let's let them choose who our political leaders are, because we're going to get rid of limitations on campaign spending by big companies and PACs and things. And this is where we've ended up. A society where we have a government of billionaires, by billionaires, for billionaires, of billionaires. And they don't give a shit about the rest of us. And we're not prepared to accept that we've crossed a bright line in history, that we're not living where we lived 5 months ago.
I want to almost unpack that we are not prepared to accept, but let me go back to two other questions before I got to let you go that I want to ask you. And if you could stop playing with that steel cup on your desk or whatever that noise is. I'm doing an audio.
So I'm really sorry to drink from a can of seltzer water.
Well, you have a great microphone. You sound amazing on it, and you're a brilliant, articulate man, and yet you have a LaCroix that you're fucking wobbling around over here, and it just seems like a weird thing to do to you. Such an amazing otherwise performance.
Yeah, I really would apologize if I felt bad about
it. Apologize to my investors. Trump's ideology seems just to be one of, he doesn't understand Elon Musk and how he thinks, or Curtis Yarvin or Mitch McConnell or anybody. His ideology seems to be simply revenge. And you made a YouTube video, which is interesting, about who he's always been as well. So I just wanted to ask you about what he's specifically motivated by every day. Because he's performing. It's a big TV show for him. He likes his people fighting. He doesn't care about any consequences, apparently, the economy. He's saying horrible things. I forgot to ask you more about Canada. But just on the revenge, I feel like that's the best way to understand at least what his specific day-to-day motivation is. But maybe there's more to it than that.
There is more to it than that, because on the one hand, Trump's ideology is Trump. He has the same ideology as any lower life form on this planet. Right. Which is me. I need to feed, eat. I need to eat. I need to poop. I need to sleep. And it's like a baby. That's all he's thinking about.
Right.
The problem is that in a human being, to maintain that requires some pathological break with social norms and builds up resentment in people around you. And then you have to figure out how to deal with that. And Trump's resentment is, all people against me are bad. All people who are for me are good. I will reward the people who are for me. I will penalize the people who are against me. And that's narcissistic personality disorder. And it's writ large in this guy. And it's then amplified by Elon Musk, who certainly has it more than he does, and by others throughout this administration. But has broken down the international system. We are literally, if you made a list of the 10 things the United States has stood for 80 years, at least as principles, the rule of law internationally, alliances internationally, promoting democracy internationally, opposing aggression.
Deep poverty, hunger, trying to cure disease.
Right. You pick that list. And yeah, I know we can criticize everything you just
sure.
But that was the organizing principles. We're against all those things now. If you identify people who were our friends for 80 years, they're now the people we're attacking. If you identify people who were our enemies for most of that period, they are the people we are aligned with and supporting. This has changed. And the perfect example, you brought it up a moment ago, is Canada.
Yeah,
Canada is our best friend, our nearest neighbor, a great partner in many things. They send soldiers to fight in our battles. They've sacrificed for us. Our economies are hugely integrated. And for some demented reason, this narcissist in the White House has decided, no, we should go after the Canadian. Why? I don't know. I don't know what the root of this is. I know why Elon's family left Canada, because Canada doesn't like Nazis. Maybe that's it.
Maybe some people say it's his impulse to leave a legacy of expansion.
Maybe he read some stupid bullshit. I don't know who it was. At some point, this interesting thing happened. Trump knows nothing about history. He is a blithering moron. And somebody managed to put in his brain the idea that the best U.S. president in history prior to him, because he said during his speech he was the best and George Washington was second, But the best U.S. president in history was William McKinley. Now, where did this come from? How does he even know this guy existed? But McKinley did tariffs, and McKinley began this period of expansionism, Spanish-American War, and all that other kind of stuff, where the United States started flexing its muscle as an international power. And Trump's, I like that. Now, because he doesn't actually read books, he reads tweets, he doesn't know that McKinley's tariffs led not to one, but to multiple depressions.
They didn't work?
No. And that the period of American expansionism, our brief flirtation with international empire beyond our shores, also produced immense problems. Or, and this is going to be a real shocker for him, that McKinley was assassinated. McKinley didn't survive his own term in office. And the main thing that McKinley did that was actually good and of lasting value to the United States was he picked Theodore Roosevelt to be his running mate. And he was succeeded by Theodore Roosevelt, who was actually
that was a good choice. Maybe that was his influence. By the way, the White House logs say that a young Stephen McKinley has been to the White House several times, and he's the great-grandson of William McKinley. So maybe
I think that's beautiful. But can you imagine what Teddy Roosevelt would have thought of Donald Trump or Elon Musk?
I don't know enough about Teddy to think. But
he was the guy who led the trust buster movement in the United States. He was the one who said the robber barons have got to. Now, his international views left something to be desired, and he was some rich guy. He wasn't perfect, but he was the guy who said the rich have too much power in this country, and he began to push back on that. And as a consequence, that led to regulatory reform, and ultimately it led to some important new institutions in the United States, including having an income tax.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you just about the Democrats' response from the electeds to the movement. I guess there are two different answers, whatever you want to call the movement that is against Trump and Musk, which seems to be growing. And what I guess the most interesting thing is not by people who've been paying attention to politics for the last few years or a decade or since Trump was elected, but by people who are really, I think, Elon Musk is putting a lot out in terms of fighting apathy from people who might not know who this guy was or is, or they did, and now they're seeing what he's doing, not to mention all these videos of federal workers and the pain that's being caused. So my question is about Democratic electeds and their strategy versus kind of the whatever you want to call it movement, activist movement. I saw that you were you really were impressed with the paddle strategy at Trump's speech. You thought
that was very powerful. that was very powerful. I don't know where they got the text. The text actually looked like the little fortunes you get from the Magic 8 Ball.
Right.
In fact, I'm surprised they didn't hold up little panels that said, "My sources say no." It was, when you talk about Democrat strategy, of course, I assume you're being facetious. Because there is no Democratic strategy. Yeah. The Democrats are in shock. They're literally, the people that come out of a burning building where a gas line exploded and the building is behind them in rubble and they're sitting on the curb and they don't know what the fuck happened to them. And it's time for them to pull themselves together and realize that the building is burning, the neighborhood is burning, the city is burning, and that if they don't figure out what to do about it, it's all going to be gone. And so it's time to clear their heads and get to legitimate resistance. And I've been in meetings of people, some Dems who are like, what do we do about this? And they're like, we have to figure out what the people care about. And here's the thing. The people know what they care about. And where we're really going to have resistance here, and you and I have talked about this before, is at the people level. People are losing their jobs. Getting rid of Medicare, Medicaid is going to have grandma come and live in your house. Yeah. You're not going to be able, you're getting rid of the VA is going to mean that you won't get the operation and you're going to die. Getting rid of Social Security or having it take 3 years to get an approval for something means that you're not going to have food on the table. Those people may not care about politics. They do care about surviving. And they do care about people who take food out of their children's mouths. Those people are our hope because the bad policies of Trump, the insane policies of Elon Musk, the consequences of their policies are ultimately going to cause those people to rise up and say, nope, no more. Hopefully in the midterm elections, hopefully in the next presidential elections, if we're allowed to have those. And if we're not allowed to have those, then hopefully in the streets. Hopefully they just won't allow the country to be stolen by a bunch of oligarchs who see it purely as an asset to exploit, to maximize the cash they can get out of it, and then to dump it. And so that's where it is. And I know you've spent a lot of time in local political settings. And honestly, I think there have been some Democrats doing town halls at that level. I think Democratic leaders need to go down into those settings and talk to those people.
Yeah, we're doing a really exciting thing in my district now. We just announced Mike Lawler, the Republican.
He's a piece of shit. Anyway,
Yeah, thank you. I would go harder. He was on CNN on that comedy show with Michael Ian Black, who's a friend of mine. And Michael Ian Black made him promise he wouldn't cut Medicaid, and then he voted to cut Medicaid. And so we've invited Michael Ian Black up to New York 17, and I'm going to interview him. And we're going to have all the Democrats who are running against him invited, as well as the local Indivisible movement, to make, because this guy won't do a town hall. So we're just going to invite a celebrity up who he promised not to cut Medicaid to. So that's my local activist.
I think one thing people have to keep in mind is the following. Shaming guys like Trump on their hypocrisy won't work. Trump's 78. He will be 82 when he leaves. He is a billionaire. He does not give a fuck whether you think he's a liar or not. He just wants to say whatever it is that will enable him to achieve his near-term goal, which is power, adulation, money, whatever that may be. And while I think it's good to do anything that draws attention to this, the other thing I would suggest people do is look at what he responds to. Look at what can change their behavior. For example, yesterday morning, it's Friday, whatever day it is, Wednesday is that we're recording this, Trump announced big tariffs against Canada.
Right.
The stock market plummeted. Yesterday afternoon, he withdrew the big tariffs because he cares about the stock market. He cares about rich people. CEOs are calling him up saying, don't do this shit. And so as much as we want to promote awareness at the grassroots levels I was talking about, we should also find ways to put pressure on corporates and others who he listens to,
right,
in order to mitigate the effects of what's going on.
Were you also going to say Trump may not respond to shame, but a guy like Mike Lawler and others would?
I think if you're up for election every 2 years and you're not assuming that you're going to be dead or you can't run again, as Trump does, then because Mike Lawler is in a purplish district, and so he knows he can lose his job. And he won't respond by shame. These people, basically, a lot of these Republicans have said, I don't want to be primaried because Elon will fund a primary against. And okay, fine. That I understand what you're afraid of there. How about this? If you support certain policies, you are assured of losing in the general. So it doesn't matter whether you lose in the primary.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That would win. I like it. All right. Thank you very much. My mom is going to love this conversation. She loves you.
Anything that can help boost you in the eyes of your mother.
That's exactly what we're going for.
That's what I'm here to. That's what we do basically in our lives.
Yeah.
My parents are both dead. I still constantly try to impress them every day.
You're doing a damn good job. I bet. I don't
know. Who knows? Who knows? But
really excited.
But I'm going to keep trying. Anyway, it's very good to see you and look into your deep green eyes, your dollar green eyes. And hope to do it again soon.
Thank you, sir. All right, there you have it. David Rothkopf, everybody. Thank you very much to him for joining us. Go thank him on Blue Sky. He'll probably see it, so I would appreciate that very, very much. And go subscribe to his Substack as well as his Deep State Radio network of podcasts. And that is all I've got for you. Go buy John Carroll's new album at johncarroll.org. I hope to see you tonight. Look for that email. Let you know what time I'm going to make it home to host the Hangout. And I hope that you are finding joy wherever you can and not letting anything in the universe steal it from you, although it's inevitable that it will. Hopefully you can bounce back and find it, the rays of light, the green shoots that are coming up, the daffodils, the spring that's just around the corner, and anything else. Listen to the right wolf in your mind, the one that brings you the love and the joy and the comfort, and not the one that brings you the worry and the anxiety. And I'm here for you. You're here for me, and I couldn't be happier about that. Talk to you tomorrow, maybe tonight. Bye-bye.